Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect One-Word Conversations. One-Word Conversations is a self-discovery, relationship-building conversation designed to invite you to look at your language to see how we communicate with each other. Many times we can put together all the wonderful words that we can think of and still find ourselves in a place of disconnection. Mainly because words don't just come with definitions, they come with stories, expectations, emotions, all the things that sometimes get in the way of our communication. But if we are willing to have a one-word conversation, I believe you can learn more about yourself, the person that you're speaking with, and just possibly build a relationship. One More Conversation is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. One way that I spotlight what's available at IamWilliamBrown.com is our U cards. Our U cards are part of the Beyond the Shell series. It is a couple of children's books and a journal. The children's books are Finding You Beyond What Protects You and The Journey to Stay You. So the cards that I picked for today to set the intention is I am kind, you are curious, and the quote card is I think you should just do it. So that should be fun. I don't know why I thought that was funny today, but yeah. So we'll see how that comes up within the conversation today. This is the moment that I invite you to like, share, ask questions, subscribe, do all those things to let me know that you're also a part of this conversation. The one thing that I will say before I introduce our word for today is that on Thursday of this week, we will be celebrating our episode 300. I'm just like amazed and not amazed with that. Yeah, 300 episodes will be on Thursday. And in honor or in celebration of that, I will be introducing a new tool for the show. It is the One Word Journal. So it is 30 days to discover. I think it's like 30 days to see that your life is more than a definition or something. But sometimes I come up with creative things and I forget. So, but that is going to be available for a downloadable journal for you for free. And then we'll put it on sale after that. So you can journal along within the conversations that we have. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited that you're a part of this conversation. So the word today is create. Create is a fun word. And so I'm looking forward to really unpacking this word with my guests. So as I do, I invite my guests in so we can have a conversation.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you for having me on your show.
This is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them.
I am Dr. Sarah Jefferis. I am a writer, speaker, poet, writing coach, and CEO of my own business called Right Now. I'm also a single mom with 2 fabulous girls, and I live in upstate New York.
Oh, wonderful. I'm trying to take all that in because that was a lot. So how does the word create land for you?
Thank you for having me on the show. And I've been thinking about that word a lot because I tend to lean towards creativity or the creator or the act of creation.
Right.
And what I love about create is that it has in it sort of the definition of to produce something that was not there before. And it has to imagine something that was not there before. And the reason I love that is because I think in this crazy capitalist society, we think we have to produce all the time,
Right.
and we forget to imagine and dream.
Right.
Dreaming is sometimes even like hard for me.
Hmm.
And yet at the same time, I love our imagination and my imagination and my daughter's imagination. And I love asking the question, what might be possible?
Right.
Which, in this COVID landscape is a really hard question to ask.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally get that. It's, I've had, I consider myself a creative, right? I was performing arts in high school and college. I was on stage. I could sing a little bit, or I don't know. I was enough to be in the choir, right?
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
But about 3 years ago, I had a coach in their training say that we need to let go that we're creators. We're not creators, we're discoverers.
Mm,
Everything that we have, that we're just discovering a new way of showing up in the world. So
mm,
I mean, and it was just, there was like a sigh of relief, because there's sometimes when I would like look at that blank page, or look at the something that I felt, that sales page for me and our business, right? You start playing, it's like, I gotta create this wonderful thing, right?
mm,
But it is just, how can I discover a new way to look at this? And I love how you said your imagination is something that the imagination, a part of that. Sometimes I, I allow things to stay in my head, just so I don't have to deal with creating it, right?
mhm,
It's so
mhm,
much better there. But it's in some cases, it's in both places,
mhm,
even if I don't put my hands to it.
mhm. When I work with my clients, and also just for myself, I think a lot about the writer in our head, the
Mm,
writer in our hand, and the writer in our mouth. And sometimes the
mm,
sentences in our head are louder or stranger
mm.
or more powerful or more made up, like, more,
Right.
like,
It's like, yeah, we're not going to let that out, right?
right. But at the same time, sometimes the sentences in our head are very, very beautiful,
Right.
right? Like I'm thinking about an example.
Okay.
I have recently started my yoga certification training, and it's 200 hours of yoga, meditation, and study. And I love it. And it's also kicking my ass, like,
Right.
just to be really
Right.
honest. Like, it's wonderful. And it's also like, huh, right?
Right.
And I
What
have
did I sign up for? Right.
yeah, I have a practice of yoga, and I've had a practice of yoga since graduate school. So for 20 years. But it was a kind of a love-hate relationship with yoga. And I would come to the mat and I would feel like I could release and relax and stretch. But then I'd have to go on to my busy day of graduate school, or then motherhood, or then divorce, or, I could add that and
Right.
then, right?
All the thing, right?
But lately, when I was in yoga class, I said out loud one of those sentences that was in my head,
Right.
right? And the 7 people massed around me were like, and what I said was, I appreciate this deep meditation work we've been doing this weekend on loving kindness, because I no longer feel like there are so many ghosts on the mat with me.
Wow.
And the people don't
Mm.
know me. They're not like, oh, she's a poet. They just were like, okay, what do you mean? And so
Right.
sometimes when we say something in our head and then we say it, we give it permission, which I think is incredibly
Right.
important.
Absolutely.
It can land for someone else in a way that's really powerful. And what I meant was, I've been able to let go of
Mm.
all of the people that I bring to this space with me.
Right.
And I didn't know that I was going to get to do that. Like, so thank you. Thank you for that gift of meditation and being able to let go. And the reason I bring that up is because I think or I've noticed for me, if I
Mhm.
hold on to things, I create or discover less.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm able, and and I struggle with letting go, I'll say that up front. I'm not, people are like, let go,
Right.
let
Right.
God. And I'm like,
Nah, it's
how?
mine. Right.
How? How? Right. And they're
Right.
like, let go. And I'm like, okay, I let go like this. And I'm still holding
Right.
on over here.
Right.
So,
It's like you still
um,
got the other end, right?
yeah. But I've been thinking about that. Like, what if the possibility of creating
Mm,
came after letting go?
mm.
Right? Because the
Wow.
yoga was very different after that. Like the stretch was different, the pose was different, the meditation was different. And I just thought, like, oh, I don't have so many like stories with me on
Right.
the mat right now.
Right.
Um, but I was thinking about the word, and I wanted to bring up one of my favorite poems
Okay.
by Mary Oliver. It's called The Summer Day.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share it, if that's
All
okay.
right. Wonderful.
It begins like this. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I do not know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Hmm.
I love that poem.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's the the conversations that we have in our mind, right? In our hands, in our mouth that you talked about before. It's just listening to that. I could see those images, and
Mhm.
and I can just really kind of embrace. And so what I see is may not be what was created, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
What they saw Mary Oliver, right?
Yes.
Some of the when she was discovering that for herself and creating that. Like I said, I sometimes I get so hung up with, because I don't want to. I want to be intentional in my words or how they're showing up for me, so that I can um, still get the power from it.
Mhm.
And so there's still power in create for me and
Mhm.
creative, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I take the ownership away from it,
Mm.
so the more that I discover, the more that I create, the
Mm.
more that,
Mhm.
but if I try to create, I'll discover that I'm frustrated, right? Right,
Right. Right. Right.
So it's that type of thing. And it's like what you were saying with your yoga practice. And the main thing that I don't I can't even say that I have a love-hate relationship with a yoga practice, because I've probably in my lifetime I've probably done yoga probably 5 or 6 times. And the main reason why that is the case, and I really haven't embraced that, is because I have held on to um, the fact that I want to look good while doing it, even though I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I need to look good at doing whatever the hell I'm doing, right? you know? So it's like, yeah, it's like, that doesn't feel right. I can imagine what that looks like. I'm not going to do this in public, right? It's like, I'm sure this may help me, right? But but there are some images that I just don't want to create for people. So it's that type of thing. So to really embrace, like you were saying, truly letting go. And so those ghosts can go. They can, there's
Yeah,
nobody else on the mat, just me. We're
just me.
just all right. And we're gonna
Yeah.
and we're gonna figure this out.
Yeah. I have that same issue with yoga. And one of my teachers said, Sarah, there's no perfect pose.
Right.
And I was like, oh, right. And
Right.
I'm in a class with women of a variety of ages. And I noticed like, oh, the younger women can bend this way.
Right.
And I don't bend that way because I've
Right.
had 2 children.
Right.
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 But I've been thinking about how not to compare, right? Because
Mhm.
the idea of what you said, like, oh, I'm afraid, you didn't say I'm afraid, but you said, I might not be doing it the way it's supposed to be done.
Right.
I think we carry that with us in most things we do, whether it's to write a poem, to write a speech, to be on a podcast, to go to
Right.
yoga, that
Right.
fear or idea of like, oh shit, I'm going to be doing it the way it's not supposed to be done.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes that gets in the way of what we can create
Right.
or discover. I've been
Or
thinking about discover.
right. It's, and I think that because, sometimes I say things that I don't quite fully understand, but it's like just seems like a good thing to say. But that our my imagination, right? When I'm creative and kind of see something that I want to put out in the world, the challenge that I have is when I put what I call humanity to it, my humanity to it, my humanity to what I see, right, is my choices, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes my choices don't produce exactly what I saw. And
Mhm.
now I think that, oh, I must have did it wrong. No, that is just what you saw with your humanity connected to it.
Yeah.
And being okay with accepting that and saying that is what I'm able to create.
Oh, I'm like, oh, I feel that.
Right.
I feel that, right? Because sometimes, at least for me, when I create something, I want it to be as close to what I imagined.
Right.
And the humanity is a bit where the crack is,
Mhm.
right? Or the humanity is a bit where the paper, if I'm doing origami,
Right.
folded the wrong way or has like a
Mhm.
double crease.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I have to accept that.
Right. Right.
I'm like, right. And I'm like, no, I'll start again. Right. And I'm like,
Right.
no, I have to like accept it as it is. So I love what you said about the humanity being attached to what we have produced, even if it interrupts our intentional design.
Right. Right. To really I don't know if this is a theory or not. And this is like the second time in like 2 weeks that I've used I gave him a shout out. The Bob Ross, theory of, happy little accidents, right? you know, you know. And it's like, oh, okay, now that's a tree, right? you know, and it's like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, how many trees have we created? Because, when we were looking for birds, right?
Hmm.
Creating, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's like, all right, now that's a tree, right?
Yeah.
Let's try that bird again. Oh, there's another tree.
Wow, I must really want to do trees
Yeah,
today.
I think, and it's like now we change our intentions. Okay, we're just making trees, right?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. And this conversation reminds me of this quote by Nick Cave. Do you know Nick Cave?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God. He's like
Okay.
sorry, I got very excited. He's one of
Right.
my
I was like, you're
favorite.
scared.
No, I'm just so excited. I'm like jumping up. He's one of my favorite artists.
Okay, Nick Cave.
Nick Cave, and he has he's oh God, it's just like so good. And he has one of his web pages is like the redhandflies.com. And it's where people write him letters and he responds about creativity and art. But he made these incredible sound suits.
Hmm.
And what happened is he was sitting in, he tells the story, and you can find him on the web. So I'll just briefly tell the story. He was like
Okay.
sitting in the park and he was thinking, as a man of color, how can I protect myself from violence in America?
Okay.
How can I do that? And he was really feeling like he didn't know how. And so he gathered up these sticks and twigs and leaves in the park, and he took them home to make a sculpture, right? Because he's a sculpture artist. And he made this giant suit. And then he realized it made noise. And then
Hmm.
he realized he could get into it. And
Hmm.
when he was in it, individuals didn't see him as a Black man. They didn't see him as a man. They didn't see him as a gay man. They didn't see him as someone from Chicago. They just saw this suit, right? And
Right.
so he made all these incredible suits. One started with twigs, but others were like different shapes and sounds. And they make sound. That's why he calls them the sound suits.
Right.
And what he said about that process was that he was allowed to move through the world in a different way,
Hmm.
right? And people
Wow.
come to see his art all the time. And it's really, it's incredibly moving for me, right? Like as a
Hmm.
white woman who thinks it is my responsibility to eradicate racism,
Hmm.
that this artist thinks I need to put on a different suit so that I can
Hmm.
be safe.
Wow.
I don't have
Hmm.
I don't have that, right? That's not what happens for me in the world. And
Right.
he's this incredible artist, and this is what he said, because it's really close to what we were talking about. He said, creating art is about growing the world and increasing its reach. And it has more to do with the act of creation itself than what is actually made. Anything that animates us creatively in a positive way, be it the big grand design of a great architectural wonder or the
Hmm.
big bang of a child's drawing, is a reenactment of the original creation story. This is why I thought of this, because you said trees. Whether
Hmm.
we realize it or not, making art is a religious encounter, as it is our attempts to grow beyond ourselves that energize the soul of the universe.
Wow. Hmm.
Like, I
Right.
love that quote so
Right.
much, right? Because it's
Right.
really saying, like, when we engage in the act of making something, a
Right.
painting, a happy accident, a poem, a
Right.
chicken in the oven that became chicken soup today
Right.
because I was like, it's too cold to go outside. So the
Right.
leftover, it's going to be this. When we make something,
Right.
we are in that act of creation,
Right.
and we are closer then to the divine.
Right.
And I love that because it releases the pressure of having the thing that is being made to be perfect.
Right. Wow. You know, I've said that you know, as I said before, I say things before I totally understand or appreciate, right? And so I've been saying for almost a year now that I see us, I see myself, right? And invite people to see themselves as a unique expression of God.
Mhm.
And so if we see ourselves as a unique expression of God or the divine um, is creation, is,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
creates. So we are create, right?
Yes.
We are,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
So the more that we tap into being ourselves,
Mhm.
the more that there's no comparison. You know, there's always, you know, the other hang up that I have is I feel like I'm doing myself wrong, right? It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I failed at being myself. Well, no, you can't. You know, you can't fail at being
Oh,
yourself. You're
no.
just, and so the more that I embrace who I am or who I currently understand myself to be, because I embrace that I am whole and complete, right? But at the same time, I am not currently aware of my completeness.
Mm.
And so I'm not missing anything, but I'm just not aware of it.
Right.
And so the more that I live my life, the more that I'm moving forward in my life, the more that I become aware of my completeness.
Mhm.
And that's the invitation. That's when we
Mm.
get those moments to create, and to really share what's going on in our head and what's going on in our heart and how
Mhm.
things are touching us.
Mhm.
And going from there, I think the conversation that I have about self-awareness, um, I have a conversation around labels.
Mhm.
And when you were talking about the sound suit, um, and how, Nick was able to kind of not be, in my language, all those other labels, right?
Mhm.
That's the invitation that I'm inviting people to do with living beyond your label. It's
Mm.
not denying your labels or ignoring
Right.
labels,
Right.
um, but realizing that beyond my labels, that's where I am.
Mhm.
And if you're willing to see beyond my black label, my male label, my old label. Some people still think I'm young. Some people's like, "Oh, you're so old," right? It's like, how can I be both, right? Right? It's like, but depending on who's looking and their definition,
Mm.
right? And so, who am I? You know, my label doesn't give me the freedom to be. It is
Mm.
just how I'm currently showing up.
Mhm.
That is the main reason why I invite my guests to introduce themselves however they like,
Mhm.
is because I want to know what label I'm
Mm.
speaking to,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The other labels, there may be other labels that show up within the conversation, but whatever label starts, if you want to have a good conversation, you talk to that one first, right?
Right. Right.
Because if
Right.
you ignore that one, they're not leaving, right? until
Right.
until until they're heard, right?
Right. 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 Right.
So what do we want to create with that? And it starts
Mhm.
by being ourselves.
Mhm. And I love what you said about how we can't ignore the labels, right? Like it
Right.
is not to pretend that there is no difference,
Right.
right? It is to ask, how do we celebrate difference? How do
Right.
we acknowledge difference? And then how do we also understand that we don't have to give the difference so much power,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
There's beauty in the difference. There is power in the difference, but we don't also have to say that the difference then puts me here and you here.
Right.
Yes, there is systemic bullshit that has
Right.
put people
Absolutely.
above other people.
Right.
Absolutely. And yes, like as a white woman, I need to work on that.
Hmm.
And I don't want it just to be a conversation about difference because then
Right.
it's like a 5-minute conversation. I mean, it's
Right.
like brief, right?
Right.
And but I wouldn't ever ignore it, right?
Right.
And so that's interesting too, because then when I create something and when you create something, our two trees or two birds are
Right.
going to be totally different,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And some of us like it's like that's not a tree. Right. Right.
Right, right,
It's like yes, it is. It's like all right, all right. Right. It's like
right.
um yeah. What were
Which,
you saying?
oh, it just brings up the idea to me that we can make something
Right.
and that the person receiving what we have made also makes it with us,
Right. Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Like we can make something, a poem, a painting, a picture, call it X, a tree, a bird, a
Right.
plant, whatever. And that the person receiving what we have made
Right.
brings their narrative to it too.
Right. I think there's so much of what we're dealing with and not dealing with within our society, in my opinion, is because of our inability to accept reality. Right. Within improv or performing arts, improv works because you accept the reality, what is present, and then build on to that.
Yes.
Then add on to share
Yes.
that, oh, okay, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this.
Yes.
And the more that we are in partnership and relationship, then we can coexist. We are creating, you know? And I think we spend more time I guess, my soapbox, we spend more time disproving someone's reality
Mm.
than being with their reality. And I think the more that we can be with people where they are and what they're seeing and how they're dealing with all of that, then we can create the world that we want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, that's a challenge, because we have, I've used the word, I think last week, evidence. Evidence is important, and it's not important because sometimes the evidence gets in the way of the possibility
Mm-hmm.
of something else showing up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and where we're getting that information, and how that that evidence was put together.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of quote unquote evidence that we have that is keeping us from really creating on the level that will make a difference for our life.
Mm.
You know, I
Mhm.
there's a lot of evidence
Mhm.
that prove that I should never be a writer, right?
Oh,
you know, you
me
know?
too. There is a lot of evidence that proved that I would never get a PhD, like
right,
never in my life, like
right,
ever.
right,
Um, and when you said that too, I was thinking we sometimes hold that evidence as writing blocks
mm, right,
or creative blocks, right? And
mhm,
we think that it's true, when in fact, sometimes that evidence is just the wound of someone who spoke to us,
wow,
that we
mm,
have internalized, at least for me,
hmm,
as a
got it,
truth, as a
hmm,
truth. And I'm like, oh, is that true? And so lately, in this past year of interior reflection, otherwise known as COVID,
right.
right?
I love that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the year where for me, I was like, okay, I'm not going to play at this game of meditation anymore. I'm actually really going to be with it. There's playfulness in meditation, but I'm
Right,
actually going to make a commitment to it, right?
right,
Because too many people are dying, and every day it makes me weep. So I need to go meditate and let some of that go, and also send blessings for the dying. And
right,
like I have a writing client who I adore. She's an ICU nurse in
mm,
Chicago working with
mm,
COVID patients. She's now in the hospital with COVID, and I
mm,
send blessings to her. But I'm also like, what the hell? Right? Right?
right,
Like, so this year of interior reflection is also a year where I think we need to send love and creative energy to all the people who are doctors and nurses and ambulance workers and in the morgue. I mean, no, maybe people are talking about the morgues, but I have
right,
thought many times of the people who are washing the dead,
right,
right? And
mm,
who are tending the dead and tending the families of the dead,
right,
right? And how
mm,
exhausted they must be,
right,
right? And I've
wow,
also thought about, like, because I have children, the kids of the nurses and the doctors and the ambulance workers that they haven't seen,
right,
right? Because they're trying to protect them,
right.
right?
Mm.
Sorry to turn the conversation so
Oh
serious,
no,
but um,
that's
that's
what we're doing. That's reality.
yeah, yeah,
How can we accept that reality and create on top of that,
right,
right? How
right,
can we learn and reflect and be present? And
yeah,
I think that's what this moment is inviting for us. So no, this is exactly what's needed.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that for me, creativity, even in the middle of COVID, is a way to honor those who are working in, the hospitals and morgues, but also creativity may be exactly what they need
Mm,
when they have a break, right?
right,
Like I've been thinking, like, what if we sent watercolors and canvases to all the nurses and the doctors and just said,
right,
on your break, go paint,
right,
right? Because I have friends who are also doing like grief work and talk therapy with them, and that's very important, right? Because
right,
they've had to call too many dead people.
right,
But I also think they must want to create to release
right.
everything they've seen,
Hmm. Wow.
you know?
Mm,
Um, or journals or whatever like medium it is, right?
right.
But I wanted to go back to one thing that you said, which was that we hold evidence that stops us from creating. That really like spoke to me, because I think, at least with clients that I've worked with in my business, they find that the writing block is something that they believe and hold as evidence when it's not actually evidence at all. So I was going to ask you, like, how do you determine that something is evidence versus a lie?
Right. Well, now that's a whole nother conversation. But now
You can do this again.
I really, I think that's where I am right now, is to, it really, I've been having, okay, so I'll answer it this way. Within self-awareness, I think there's a difference between a reflection and projection. And many times when we show up in front of people as ourselves, sometimes they reflect us, how we're showing up, and it's great, it's wonderful, and that gives us information to go. But sometimes there are times when we show up and there's a projection, and we think that it's us. Think that's how we're showing up, but it's really their shit that
And we're like,
and sometimes we can mistake that projection as a reflection, and then that could like take years from our life. And so, to answer your question, it
you just spoke my truth,
right? To how do you determine the lie in the evidence? Because there are. The truth is right in front of us, right? But sometimes the truth is hidden by addendas and fears and anxieties and all the things that come up, and we're trying to like get a clearing so we can just get the truth. And so there are some days, and usually within those days, there's a meditation day. There's an appreciation that happens. There's a lot of, I don't want to say things that like go well to create the clearings for my life, and so I can see bullshit coming a mile away, right? But there is also those days where I don't have all of those, and I'm not eating right. I don't have enough water, and then it's like, okay, is that a lie? Right? It's like, is that me? Or, so I'm just all over the place. So I think the more that I take those opportunities to really, take care of myself and be aware of how I'm showing up, then I can see what's true, and what's not true. And then make those decisions and make those choices around that. So hopefully that answered your question.
It did. And I've been thinking too, and obviously feel free to agree or disagree with me, but I've been thinking how truthfulness, or I believe it's satya in the yamas and niyamas, and like truthfulness in the yoga practice, like truthfulness in the ethics, that what was true for me at 30 is not true now. I'm past 30.
Right.
Just a little. Well, thank you. And what was true for me at 20 is not true now.
Right.
And so I've been thinking about, is there little truth, capital T truth? Like, I deeply believe in the divine. That feels like truth for me.
Right.
Right. Regardless of my age. Right. And the fact that when I create something, I'm not alone, that's incredibly comforting to me.
Right.
And that seems like truth.
Right.
But there are other truths that are no longer true.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think, and I've had discussions with people. I think it was on the show and off the show, that I think the very dangerous saying of, I'm sharing my truth. It's not your truth. It's what's currently true to you. Because if it's, and so for me, I take that as, and because my mom had a hard time with me saying this, that my current lie, this is my current lie, and it's my
Mm,
current understanding of what's going on in my life, because it's not the truth, right? So if it's not the truth, it's a lie. And the more that I say that this is my current lie, I am still in search of truth.
mhm.
But if I stop and say this is the truth, we're done. Mic drop. I'm the truth, and what you're saying is a lie, right? And it's like there's no way that I can have a conversation, relationship, create anything if I feel like I'm the arbiter of truth.
Right, right.
And I think it goes back
Mm,
to, our trees and our birds, right?
mhm.
If I believe that slip in my hand that was going to be a bird, now it can no longer be a bird. And now it's like nothing. So I have to I have to clean this off or something like that.
Mm.
I don't leave myself open to create anything.
Yeah.
And so that's what the more that we recognize that the process of our lives, the process of creating, um, there's lies in there. There's lies that show up, right? And
Mhm,
it's not to harm you,
mhm,
but to invite you to go, make another stroke, write another word,
mhm,
find
mhm,
another tune, right?
mhm,
Something to kind of add to that, so you can add on to that.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think when I hear you saying that, when we don't let ourselves realize that it could be a bird, we are getting in the way,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And so then you said, I can't create anything, right? And then the I can't even enter into that magical process, right,
Right.
of making something, because I'm so bound on what it has to be,
Right.
right? And again,
Right.
coming back to the yoga practice, we talk about letting go of outcomes. And I remember sitting there being like, I don't want to let go of my outcomes.
Right. Right.
Are you kidding me? My outcomes got me a PhD, coming from a poor household in the South, surviving so many different things. No,
Right.
I'm good with my outcomes. And then I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, I can see where I need to let go of like wanting it to be the only bird possible, right?
Right.
But I also loved what you said about this is my lie right now, right? And
Right.
that I need to uncover it to see what truths might exist.
Right.
Um, which is really interesting because then, of course, it creates again the idea, creates, of course,
Right.
again the idea that everything is always changing,
Right.
that change is inevitable, growth
Right.
is optional.
Right.
And so if I meet you and you tell me this is your belief, a week later we meet again, you might be like, ah, I'm over that. And
Right.
you're
It's
like,
like, what is going on with you? Right. Right.
right? But at the same time, for me, there are a couple of like core beliefs around the
Hmm.
divine and love and
Right.
ethics that stay,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, but I think that we lie, which is different than saying there are lies. We lie
Right.
because we know that the truth is so powerful
Right.
and that it's kind of dangerous.
Right.
But perhaps I should say we know that a truth is so powerful
Right.
versus
Got it.
the truth, you know?
Got it. Right.
Um,
That capital T, right? Right. The
right,
capital T
right.
and the lowercase
Yeah.
t,
And like
right?
I was thinking about that too. Like this is my most recent book, which is What Enters the Mouth. And it's
Mm.
a book of poetry that came out in 2017. And it's a book about all the ways that I have survived different assaults and moved into the world
Mm.
thriving. And at the same time, there's a couple of poems in here that say, like, my sister, my sister. I don't have a sister. So
Hmm.
that's not a lie, right?
Right.
But I just decided that I was going to put an experience of like three of my female friends and put that in the poem
Right.
as my sister, because
Right.
my three female friends is too many words.
Right.
Right.
Mm. Right.
But my sister is enough of a compression. So
Right.
is that a lie
Right.
or not really? Right.
Yeah.
So when we create, especially poems or essays, I think we can shape details even as we might hold the experience to be true.
Right. Wow.
Like
Hmm.
what happened on Tuesday doesn't have to happen on Tuesday in the poem, especially
Right.
if Tuesday is not a word you need.
Right. Hmm. Wow.
Right. So in that
Uh,
creation, we're still like shifting and moving things
right.
into the object that we want it to be. That's
Right.
why I said when we started this, I said like, oh, it's about design, but it's also about imagination.
Hmm. Well, I totally get that. You know, I think we can talk about this for hours because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things just like, you know, it's like, wow, wow. It's like now there's a doing to that, right? Craig, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Um, is there anything coming up for you that you want to like leave everybody with or something that I don't know if it's like if you heard one thing, just hear this.
Yeah. Hmm. I love what you said about we are uniquely designed or made. And perhaps what I heard is we are uniquely designed or made in the image of God,
Yes.
that the creator is inside.
Hmm.
And I believe, especially from, the book, The Artist's Way, I believe that every time we enter in the act of creation, we are discovering the spirit of the divine.
Hmm. Yes.
I think that's why we get so scared of it because
Absolutely.
it's so powerful, right? That we're like, oh, I think I'll make a painting. Oh my God, no, right?
Right.
Because it's the act of doing something and bringing us closer to the divine.
Right.
And I'm
Oh,
grateful for
wonderful.
that every
Right.
day.
Our daily happy little accidents, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When we let go, when
Right.
we're not
And
holding
when
on.
we let go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This has
Oh, thank
been
you.
um, an incredible conversation.
Mhm.
I think really how I look at create, right, has
Yeah.
really expanded, and I think that's what these conversations are all about. So we're not just, or I'll speak for myself, that I'm not just this is what it is.
Right.
This is what this word means. This is how it's showing up. That's it.
Yeah.
But the more that I will have these conversations, the word can expand,
Hmm.
and we can be with it. So
Yeah.
I hope you're able to stay, and so we can say
Yes.
goodbyes from the green room. But this
Yes.
has
Thank you.
definitely been great.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. It's been fabulous. I really
Okay.
appreciate it. Okay.
Okay. Oh, create. How does create show up for you? Um, this morning on my Happy Today morning reflection show, something that came up that I'm being present to it right now is that manifestation is not magical. It's practical. And the more that there's a practicality to what we're manifesting in the world, what we're creating, what we're able to create in the world, there is a purpose because we are purpose. And so the more that you are yourself, the more you'll see yourself in the world. Sit with that for a moment. I hope this conversation has not just added value to your day, but to your life. And I invite you to reach out to me at iamwilliambrown.com to have a complimentary coaching session to help you be yourself and live your life. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, but the world isn't waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow on One More.